Once upon a time there lived a shepherd who preferred to live far from town. He made enough of a living to provide for himself, his wife, and his little daughter. Soon they expected a second child, and the night that he was born, the father went to town to get a nurse. On his way he met a monk, who begged him for a night's lodging. The man willingly agreed, and took the monk home with them. As the child needed baptized, and there were no churches nearby, the monk performed the ceremony. The baby boy was named Yanni. And as things usually happen, time passed, and eventually the parents died, leaving Yanni and his sister alone. They decided to leave their home and try to seek their fortune in the world. As they packed, the sister found a knife which the monk had left behind as a present to his godson, and she gave the knife to her brother. They set out, taking with them their 3 remaining sheep. After 3 days they met a man who had 3 dogs. He proposed that they exchange animals, and as everyone thought this was a good idea, they did so. Yanni and his sister went on their way, and in the course of time they came to a huge castle. What they did not know was that 40 draken lived inside this castle. When the draken heard Yanni approaching, they fled 40 fathoms underground. When Yanni entered the castle, he found it completely empty. He and his sister happily settled down, and every day Yanni went out to hunt using the weapons that were left in the castle. One day, while he was off hunting, a draken decided to come up to gather some more provisions. When he saw Yanni's sister, he was terrified, but she told him not to be afraid, and by they fell in love with each other, for every time Yanni went out to hunt, she would call the Dracos up. Thus they went on talking and falling in love with each other, and unknown to Yanni, they got married. Then, when it was too late, the sister repented of her deed, and she was afraid of Yanni's wrath when he found out. One day the Dracos came to her and said, "You must pretend to be ill, and when Yanni asks you what you want, you must tell him cherries. And when he inquires where they are to be found, you say, 'There are some in a garden that's a day's journey from here.' Then your brother will go, and he will never come back, for there live 3 of my brothers who will look after him well." Then the sister did as the Dracos had asked, and the next day Yanni set out to find the cherries along with his 3 hunting dogs. When he came to the garden where the cherries grew, he jumped off his horse, drank some water in the spring, and then he fell directly into a deep sleep. The draken came round about, planning to eat him, but the dogs attacked, and they tore them into pieces, and they scratched a grave in the ground with their paws, and they buried the draken so that Yanni might not see their dead bodies. When Yanni awoke and he saw his dogs covered with blood, he believed that they had caught somewhere a wild beast, and he was angry because they had not left any for him to eat. But he plucked the cherries, and he took them back to his sister. When the Dracos heard Yanni had returned, he fled for fear 40 fathoms underground. And the sister ate the cherries and declared herself to be quite well again. The next day, when Yanni went to hunt, the Dracos came back and advised the sister that she should pretend to be ill again. And when her brother asked her what she would like, she should say quinces. And when he inquired where they grew, she should say, "In a garden about 2 days' distant journey." Then Yanni certainly would be destroyed, for there dwelt 6 brothers of the Dracos. Each of them had 2 heads. The sister did as she was told, and the next day again Yanni set out, taking the dogs with him. When he came to the garden, he dismounted, sat down a while, and fell asleep. First there came 3 draken round about to eat him, but the dogs chased them away. Then came 3 others who were worried in like manner by the dogs. The dogs again dug a grave and buried the dead draken, so their master might not see them. When Yanni awoke and he beheld the dogs all covered in blood, he thought as before that they had killed a wild beast and eaten it all for themselves. But he took the quinces and took them back to his sister, who, once she had eaten them, declared herself completely better again. The Dracos, when he heard that Yanni had come back, he fled for fear 40 fathoms deeper underground. Now the next day when Yanni was hunting, the Dracos went to the sister and advised that she should once again pretend to be ill, and she should beg for some pears, which grew in a garden 3 days' journey from the castle. From this quest Yanni would certainly never return, for there dwelt 9 brothers of the Dracos, each who had 3 heads. The sister did as she was told, and the next day Yanni, taking his 3 dogs with him, went off to get the pears. When he came to the garden and laid down to rest, he fell asleep. Then first came 3 drakens to eat him, and when the dogs had gotten rid of these, others came, and they fought the dogs a long time. The noise of this combat awoke Yanni, and he slew the draken, and he knew at last why the dogs had been covered with blood. After that he freed all whom the draken held prisoners. Among others there was a princess. Out of gratitude she would have taken him as her husband, but he put her off, saying that for the kindness that I have been able to do to you, you shall receive in this castle all the blind and the lame who pass this way. The princess promised him to do so, and upon his departure she gave him a ring. So Yanni picked the pears and took them to his sister, who, when she had eaten these, declared that she felt much better. When, however, the Dracos heard that Yanni had come back a 3rd time safe and sound, he fled for fright 40 fathoms deeper underground, and the next day, when Yanni was away hunting, he crept up and he said to the sister, "Now we are indeed both lost, unless you can find out from him the secret of his strength, and then, between us, we will do away with him." When therefore Yanni had come home from hunting and sat at evening with his sister by the fire, she begged him to tell her the secret of his great strength. And he answered, "It lies in my 2 fingers. If these 2 are bound together, all my strength disappears." "That I do not believe," said the sister. "I have to see for myself." So he let her tie his fingers together with the thread, and immediately he became powerless. Then the sister called up the Dracos, who when he had come forth, he tore out Yanni's eyes, and he threw them to the dogs to eat, and he threw him into a dry well. Now it happened that some travelers who came to the well to draw water heard Yanni groaning at the bottom. They came near, and they asked where he was, and he begged them to draw him up from the well, for he was a poor, unfortunate man. The travelers let a rope down and pulled him up to the daylight. It was not till then that he became aware that he was blind. He begged the travelers to lead him to the country of the king whose daughter he had freed, and they would be well repaid for their trouble. When they brought him there, he sent to beg the princess to come to him, but she did not recognize him until he showed her the ring. Then she remembered him. She took him with her into the castle. When she learned what had befallen him, she called together all the sorceresses in the country in order that they should tell her where his eyes were. This sorceress went straight to the castle where the sister and the Dracos lived, and she gave something to the dogs to eat which caused the eyes to reappear. She took them with her and put them back in Yanni's head, so that he saw as well as he ever had. Then he returned to the castle of the Dracos, whom he slew, as well as his sister, and taking his dogs with him, he went back to the princess, and they were immediately married, and they lived happily ever after.